Susan Cabot was a talented American actress known for roles in films such as The Wasp Woman and Sorority Girl, but her life came to a tragic end in 1986 when she was brutally murdered in her home. Join Facts First as we unravel the mystery surrounding her death. Susan Cabot's life was not an easy one. Born in Boston in 1927, she was given up for adoption by her birth parents, Russian Jewish immigrants who could not care for her. She spent the first 8 years of her life in and out of foster homes before being taken in by a wealthy couple who gave her the name Susan Cabot. Cabot grew up with a love of singing and acting and eventually made her way to New York City, where she worked as a nightclub singer and recorded jingles for radio commercials. There, she was discovered by a talent agent and landed her first film role as an extra in Kiss of Death. But she struggled to find steady work. She was often typecast as a tough-talking, hard-edged character, which limited her opportunities. It was not until she met director Roger Corman that her career began to take off. Corman cast her in several of his low-budget, cult classic films, including The Wasp Woman and The Viking Woman and the Sea Serpent. Cabot's personal life was just as eventful. She had relationships with several high-profile men, including actors Marlon Brando and John Bromfield. But her most notable relationship was with King Hussein of Jordan, whom she met while on vacation in Europe. The two began a secret affair that lasted several years, during which time Hussein bought Cabot a Rolls-Royce and promised to marry her. But he ultimately ended the relationship after discovering Cabot's birth name, Harriet Shapiro, which he felt was unsuitable for a queen. Cabot's personal life took a difficult turn when she gave birth to a son with dwarfism. Despite this, she was a devoted mother and fiercely protective of her son Timothy. After retiring from acting at age 33, Cabot and Timothy lived a reclusive life in their large Encino home. It was here that Cabot's life came to a tragic end in 1986 when she was found beaten to death in her bedroom. Her tragic death. After retiring, Susan Cabot had all but vanished from the public eye. She and her son Timothy lived on a large property in an exclusive neighborhood in Encino. Neighbors rarely saw the pair, and for all intents and purposes, Cabot was a recluse. But on the night of December 10, 1986, emergency services received a call from Cabot's home on Charmion Lane. Timothy, breathless and panicked, reported a burglar had entered the home and attacked him and his mother. When the fire department paramedics arrived 4 minutes later, they found Timothy waiting outside, appearing calm. He explained his mother was in the bedroom and believed she was also injured. But as they entered the home, nothing could have prepared them. Inside, they found garbage bags strewn in every room, piles of newspapers and magazines stacked along the corridors, and trash and rotting food scattered everywhere. The house appeared to have been ransacked, with furniture overturned, drawers open, and their contents strewn around the house. The sound of Timothy's 4 pet Atika dogs made the scene more disturbing. Despite being typically docile, they were in a frenzy, and Timothy had locked them up in his room to protect the paramedics. When they reached her room, they discovered a grisly scene. Cabot, dressed only in a purple V-neck nightgown, was lying dead on her bed. Blood was everywhere, with a large arc of it sprayed on the bedroom mirror near her bed and spatter stains on the ceiling above her body. The killer had covered Cabot's face and head with a piece of bed linen before bludgeoning her to death. When the police arrived, they checked all the other rooms for signs of forced entry and to ensure the intruder was no longer present. The dogs were deemed too vicious and dangerous to remove without animal control's help, and there was one room they could not enter. From outside, investigators glimpsed weight training equipment and barbells on the floor, with pictures of Timothy's idol, Bruce Lee, adorning the walls. Problematic son. With his soft brown eyes and chestnut hair, Timothy looked like a typical teenager, but a closer look revealed something different. There was an air of maturity and wariness that seemed to emanate from his face. He was no teen after all, he was already 22. His unique appearance was due to a rare form of dwarfism caused by a defective pituitary gland. He was supposed to be only 4 feet tall, but an experimental growth hormone he'd been taking for over a decade had given him an additional 1.5 feet of height. Despite this physical abnormality, Timothy was not an ordinary young man in other ways either. He spoke and acted with an odd demeanor, one that didn't quite match his age or physical stature. Timothy's life took a dark turn that night. First, he claimed a burglar had attacked and killed his mother. But as the investigation continued, his story began to unravel. His statements to police were inconsistent, and he was brought in for questioning. During the interrogation, he admitted to killing his mother and even led detectives to the murder weapon, a barbell and a scalpel coated in her blood. Timothy had initially hidden the barbell, thinking people would believe his story of a burglar breaking in. Despite the damning evidence against him, Timothy's defense presented a surprising argument at his trial in 1989. They pleaded not guilty by reason of insanity, claiming Timothy was a human experiment gone wrong and couldn't be held fully responsible for his actions. An investigation was carried out, focused on the groundbreaking experiment that started in 1958, where Timothy was one of the numerous participants. The NIH had provided a complimentary supply of cadaver-sourced pituitary to children diagnosed with growth hormone deficiency. This batch of hormones was procured from the pituitary glands of roughly 80,000 deceased individuals. Timothy had received injections since age 6, but the miraculous treatment had devastating consequences for some. A tainted batch of growth hormones resulted in a lethal neurological disorder affecting the supply. Over time, an extraordinary number of subjects developed Creutzfeldt-Jakob disease, now commonly known as mad cow disease. This narrative seamlessly aligned with Timothy's insanity plea, as the psychological symptoms of CJD encompass drastic personality shifts, dementia, impaired cognitive function, and memory loss. In a shocking twist, it was disclosed that Cabot, under the false impression that it would help maintain her youth, had also been consuming her son's medication for years. Closure. Timothy's legal team diligently crafted a disconcerting portrayal of Susan Cabot as a woman struggling to come to terms with her diminishing fame. They depicted her as a former Hollywood star who had retreated from the spotlight, ultimately driving both herself and her son to the brink of madness. In truth, scant details were available regarding the events, or the kind of existence Timothy endured under his mother's roof. One person who had been granted access to the home was Timothy's tutor, who later testified. She recounted instances where Cabot would frequently shout at her son, seemingly without cause. A pediatric report submitted as evidence for the defense revealed that Cabot's deteriorating mental health had already begun affecting Timothy when he was a mere 11 years old. The report characterized Cabot as excessively dramatic and overprotective, while describing Timothy as emotionally underdeveloped and troubled. In September of 1989, Timothy altered his plea from not guilty by reason of insanity to a simple not guilty. He took the stand October 6, 1989, where he tearfully recounted how his mother, just before her demise, had yelled at him and appeared not to recognize him. Alarmed by her deteriorating condition, he attempted to call paramedics, only to be attacked by her with a barbell. After wrestling the barbell from her grasp, she lunged at him again, this time wielding a scalpel. In self-defense, Timothy fatally struck her. On October 10, 1989, Timothy was convicted of involuntary manslaughter, a charge that carried a 6-year prison sentence. But having spent 2.5 years in jail already, he was granted 3 years of probation. The presiding judge asserted her belief that Timothy had loved his mother very much. Susan Cabot's life and tragic demise remain a haunting tale of talent, fame, and personal struggle. Now it's time to hear from you. What was the most shocking part of this video? Let us know in the comments section below.